Before we call this meeting to order, if it's okay with Mr. Saylor, I would just like to say that my vice chair that sits to my left, Mr. Brian Covey, is not with us today, and his wife is very, very ill in the hospital in Lexington. And if we could, I would just like to ask everyone to have a quick moment of silence, not only for Brian's wife Tracy, but for everyone in all the communities that are struggling with the virus, with COVID. And I just ask that everyone just have a moment of silence for all of those people and for our school children at this time. Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call our meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone, and if we could all stand, we'll start with our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to remind everyone that we have a guest sign-in sheet. If you'd like to sign in, it's here at the table to my right. Mr. Saylor, do we have any revisions to our agenda for tonight?
No, there are no revisions.
So moving right along, we would like to have recognitions at this time. I think we moved that to our September board meeting.
Yeah, just because of the surge, we've asked the schools to wait 1 month, and we may have to bring two at the same time, but as soon as we can, we'll get back into those recognitions.
Okay. So we'll put that on our September board agenda. At this time, we have a facilities and a construction update, and I think that's Jeremy and Peter.
Yeah, we had our last monthly management meeting today for the ATC. There is some items that are still out there that we're working through, a couple of deficiency items, punch list items that we're talking through and getting handled. We should have everything wrapped up hopefully by the end of next week. And then we can move on from there. But right now we do have our certificate of occupancy. And everything is functional, for school and for the kids, which is a huge go that, getting school started was a huge go for Codell and Ross Tyne and the owner, so we're just proud of that. That's about all I have. I'll talk about the change orders in a little bit. But if you have any questions about construction or what's going on right now, just let me know.
I was at the meeting today real quick. We're 99.9% done. We do plan on final pay apps next month, and we'll do just like we did before with the bus garage. We'll go ahead and get all the checks written, and once the punch list has been completed by each of those contractors, their checks will be mailed. So it's wrapping up, guys. It's about done, and that's a good thing. So we're ready for our pay application, Ms. Esper.
Okay, so we have pay application number 24.
Pay application 24, as you looked into your attachments, you can see was for the amount of $400,195.52. And it's been reviewed by Codell and by Ross Tarrant, and it's approved for payment, and that's my recommendation to the board.
We have a motion to pay application number 24.
Make the motion.
I have a motion from Sheila Samples, and I have a second by Tammy Hardy. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Then we're down to more change orders.
Yeah, item 3 is a whole list of change orders, and these were approved in January, but there was some language that was not consistent with KR 4160, and which had to do with requesting of the time extension. It's a moot point at this time, but in reality, to make sure the paperwork is all right with KDE, we have to ask for that revision. So it's my recommendation to approve those change orders, starting with item 2-1 and ending with item 15-1. And that's one motion for all those.
So, do we have a motion? Sheila Samples and Tammy Hardy makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. Any opposed? Okay, we're moving on to item number 4, which is approval of change order 3-12, the Rising Sun Development Incorporated.
Yeah, our change order 3-12 to Rise of the Sun was for the signage across the pedway. We went with a different route, and that will actually be installed, what, Monday? So
Yes.
it'll be going up Monday on the pedway, so that's that credit you got back from the signage supplier.
And of course, we're getting money back. I will make the motion, or I will make the recommendation for you all to approve this change order.
We have a motion to approve change order item number 4, change order 3-12 with Rising Sun Development. Carrie Smallwood makes a motion.
A second.
Sheila Samples makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
And as Jeremy said, just a quick note, the pedway lettering should be done by Tuesday. So it will be completed at that time. We're really looking forward to that. It's going to be a great, I think it's really going to make that pedway pop.
Yep.
Mr. Saylor, I've had several people ask me questions about what is our enrollment at the ATC. Is this an appropriate time to share that with people, or do you want to do that later?
Yes, I can do it right now. Preliminarily, we have over 200 high school students that were attending. And Powell County started this week, and they have over 60. And you have to remember, that doesn't sound like a lot, but these kids are there taking 2 and 3 classes at a time. So if you double that enrollment just on the 260, that's 520 enrollments. Some of them are there for 3 periods, a little bit longer. So in terms of actual class periods, we have basically 500 students in attendance, in a sense, you know, and that's the way numbers are counted in ATC. Really fantastic to consider its first-year programs.
So that's really good news to share with everyone.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you didn't get a chance to see the town hall forum that was conducted by the Estill Development Alliance, you can go online and you can see that. It was a panel consisting of myself, Mr. Hall, Dr. Anthony Orr, and also Mr. Josh Yost, and it was really a good time to talk about the ATC.
Okay. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share? Okay, we're moving right along to item B. We're at the Estill County High School renovation phase number 7. So I guess that may be, that's Peter. Or is that you still, Jeremy? I'm
Still
sorry.
Jeremy, that's good.
Phase 1 of the Estill Phase 7 has begun. On 7/26, we mobilized to the site, and last week we did some moving of the footers, dug those, and just today we poured our first footer for the press box concession stand behind the softball field. So I know we've had a lot of rain, but we was able to do that today, and we was super glad of that. It gets us well on our way for the masons to come in and start the underground block, and it just frees a lot of people up. Next week we look to start demo on the tennis courts. We'll start demo of the fencing around there, and our storm drainage will start to go in, structures up on top, softball, baseball fields, and yeah, you all should see a change within the next 2 or 3 weeks up there. So as far as substantial completion right now for phase 1, we're looking at 1/4 And then our final completion at 124, and that's of 22. So that's our target. That's where we look to be at, on or before. So I know Mr. Saylor really wants that by the spring.
Right, for the
So,
baseball,
for the baseball, softball.
That's baseball, softball. It will be ready for play. And they do plan on blacktopping before Thanksgiving so that the road will be in. Final road won't probably go into about April, once we get in the season a little bit. They'll bring it all down the hill, and then they'll do the ATC driveway too that had not been completed that we've asked the contractor to hold off on. It's the same contractor on the ATC, so we just told him to hold that work. And it's our same contractor for our bus garage, so standing for builders, they're a good contractor, you can put your faith in them.
Yep.
It'll be ready. Tennis courts start here in the next few weeks, and they will be done by November 1. So they'll be ready for play this spring as well, because we want to make sure our spring sports teams have those facilities ready. Now, all the amenities won't be around the tennis courts, but the courts will be ready for play. So they're on top of things, we're moving quickly, and it's what the community's
Jeremy,
been
we
waiting
have this
for.
saying around here, under budget and ahead of time. So
Yeah.
That's right.
You were talking about the amenities, is that why some things have been rejected, because we didn't like the proposal or the?
What was it now?
Like, you were talking about the tennis court, like tennis court lining here, it says rejected, is that just because we didn't like what they proposed?
No, that was the ones, if you remember, we're going to pick those up. We're going to pick those
With
up with
other money.
contingency dollars at the end.
Okay.
We picked up everything that was critical path items to begin with, and I believe the tennis court lighting was one of the items we held off on. We also held off on the turf pad and also the track, and we're going to contract directly with those companies in order to pay for those items. And we're in the process, we'll see a couple of those items come up here in a minute with future projects
Yep.
that we'll move forward on. But we've got everything in line to get everything done that we want done.
I knew there was a reason, I just can't remember.
The lighting is probably the very last, what you would say, if something had to go, the lighting on the tennis courts would be the one thing that we would not be able to do. But we're projecting that that will be able to be done as well as of right now. So
Yeah.
that's our goal.
Absolutely.
okay.
So that's the update. If you have any questions, though, of ongoing construction or any concerns, just let me know.
So we're at item number 2 now, approval of contracts, purchase order forms, and schedule change addendum documents. And then how do you want to do that, Mr. Saylor? There's like A through K. Do you want to go
Let's
through
do
each
all of them
one?
at once. We listed those for transparency with the board and the public, but you can approve those with one motion because they're all very similar with the contract, the purchase orders, and of course, there is some revised language because of the late start date due to KDE delays. So all those are exactly the same. You've had the opportunity to look through all those. You'll see that each of them are exactly the same. My recommendation, let's approve it in one motion, and that's my recommendation.
Okay. So I would like to, does anyone want to call for a motion to approve the contracts, the purchase order forms, schedule changes, addendum documents, items A through K that's listed? Carrie Smallwood makes a motion, and Sheila Sambles makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, and we'll see our first pay app next board meeting.
Which will be September. Okay, we're down to item C on our agenda, the air quality upgrades, the Esser 2 funds.
Now,
First,
this is Peter.
this is Peter. Take the floor, Peter.
Okay. Great, well, thank you all. I'm pleased to be here, give you all some updates on this. The first one on the list is the West Urban Elementary HVAC. And to give you the good news on that one first, the complete plumbing scope is complete. The HVAC control scope of the project is complete. And all the work on 2 of the makeup air unit repairs is complete. The contractor has indicated some inventory issues with repairs for one makeup air unit, and also completing the alternate in the project, which was for some new filter housing units that needed to go in. So there is still a little bit of outstanding work left to do at West Urban, based on these repairs that need to be made. And he has indicated, or thermal equipment has indicated, probably about 3 to 4 weeks for completing that work. Half of that time is based on his estimates for receiving the necessary equipment. But I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have about that one at West Urban.
It's going as well as can be expected. Once they got into the one makeup air unit, there was a compressor down, and right now we know what lead times are on all that HVAC, which was unexpected. There was no thought process that unit was even down. But the bipolar ionization units are up and functioning in the classrooms, which you're getting ready to hear on the next part of that. So that's the good news, that as far as the individual classrooms with bipolar ionization, those units are up and running. So it's just an update. No pay app until it's done, right?
Both contractors have indicated they're not going to forward pay applications until the work is complete.
So hopefully we'll have those in September. If not, we'll have them in October, but that'll keep it clean. That way it'll be one pay app and it'll be done.
Right.
That's good. So that's it for West Urban.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Estill County district-wide air purification, our consultant Dan Higgins with CMTA met with the contractor in the field and Todd Reese this past Monday. They wanted to address some initial install of the bio-ionization units throughout the district, and some corrections are going to be required. It is my understanding that the corrective work is going to commence as early as Saturday and will be done as soon as possible, despite all of my efforts to try to get you guys some kind of end deadline on that. I don't have an end date, but I do know from Dan Higgins that the work that's left to be done is really very quick and simple. So I would not anticipate this taking very long at all to get these corrections made. So
To put it simply, they put some of the bipolar ionization units in some closets and stuff like that where they didn't need to go. So they ended up short a few. They're working Saturday to make sure, I think all the classroom spaces are covered, and they do have those up and running. So just one of those things that can be corrected. Also, I'll throw in here for you all just a side note. At South Urban, it was not part of this. The district purchased those and installed them themselves. Mr. Reese installed those on the weekend before South Urban started school. So in all classrooms, bipolar ionization units are up and running, and that's part of the mitigation process for COVID-19. And we've went through that a million times in terms of what those units do. So I don't know if you got any more questions for Peter or not.
Hi, Jeremy, thank you. Does anybody have anything for Peter? Okay, if not, I guess we're going to move along to Peter's big presentation on future projects.
Yeah, so really appreciate, I want to thank you guys for having me here. This is something that I put together on a Mr. Saylor to review some potential prospective projects for the district. And I really do appreciate being able to be here. This is fun for me, and I'm excited. Any questions that you have, please stop me along the way. Jeremy, if you can advance the slide. So this first slide covers two separate projects that were related to the high school renovation project that we just are getting underway. These were two pieces of scope that the district decided not to take as part of the high school project, but we can pick up using Esser funds possibly. The first one is Hvac Controls, and this would be take this entire building for the first time and get it on one building automation system. And energy control, you guys, is equivalent to energy savings. And so this would be a really good thing to take care of, getting the mechanical systems in this building under control. The second one on here has to do with sanitary line replacement. There's been some issues with the sanitary line that runs out in the front of the building near the gymnasium and the kitchen cafeteria. This scope was also not taken as part of the high school project. Again, because of the improvement to air and water quality, this sanitary line replacement is a great candidate for using Esser funding. And it is, again, I'm sorry I'm not going through the numbers that I've put together here for you all, but we did do a cost opinion, and CMTA provided their cost opinion, and a total construction cost of $130,000 for project cost of $156,000. And I did not mention that on the Hvac Controls. You all can see the numbers there. That was a $480,000 project cost opinion from us on that one.
Just real quick, based on our guidance on Esser funds, both of these projects are eligible for those. As you all know, KDE delayed our high school project for almost 9 months, if not close to a year. It caused the project to skyrocket. So we were able to pull these items out and use federal money that addresses both air quality and water quality within that building. Both of these are projects we desperately need to do. So I don't know how you all feel, if you want to think about these. Of course, this was part of the high school project. We pulled them out so we would have a different pot of money. And I think it would be appropriate. We've discussed these over and over again. All the units are under bipolar ionization, so we don't have to worry about, in terms, we have the ability to help fight the COVID virus within our classrooms. This just puts everything on the same system. So Todd Reese can sit at his house at night and he can monitor that building if there's an issue. If Mr. Yost wants to turn on the air conditioning in the auditorium for an event, he can turn it on, set it to go off. So it allows you to save energy. Sanitary sewer line replacement, of course, that's the sewer line that is collapsing in front of the building. We knew it had to be done. We pulled it out in order to pay for it with these funds. My recommendation to you all, since these have already been hashed over and over again, I would ask you for a recommendation to move forward with both of these projects so that they can begin planning. You're looking at the sanitary line replacement probably not going to happen to June of next year. The HVAC controls can probably happen at any time once the gym units go in. So they possibly could do some work during spring break with that. But the deal is here right now, it's so hard to get lead time to get items here. I think if we go ahead and get these two rolling, get BG1s on them, and get them submitted to KDE, they'll turn around. I believe they'll approve them quick. Based on what we're being told, you'll see an approval come back on these by, if not the September board meeting, definitely by October. We can get the equipment and everything ordered, and then we don't have any delays. So my recommendation would be that we would approve both of these using our Esser funds.
So we're gonna do these two items and then move on to 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, we'll talk
Is
about
that
the
what-
others, and you all can decide how you want to proceed on those.
Okay.
But these are critical since they're part of a project that's already started and were part of the original product to begin with.
So, I'd like to call for,
Motion.
okay. So Shayla Samples makes a motion and Tammy Hardy makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So proceed with those two projects. So we're down to item 3,
All right, so item 3 is the South Urban Early Childhood Center. I called it a window replacement, but we've got a few items listed here. This project addresses air quality, energy savings, and security. And then there is a critical piece of getting the keying system centralized, like other buildings in the district. So replacing the window system of the original classroom wing. These windows are really old. They're terribly poor as far as keeping weather conditions out of the building. They are, however, part of the structural system of the walls of the original building, right? So these frames are actually holding the walls up, if you can imagine that. So it's not a terribly cheap fix, but the benefit of getting in a new wall system and new windows in that part of the building, you'll see immediate recovery with energy savings and air quality in the building. So we did some work on that. We feel like replacing the windows at about $92,000 and replacing the exterior wall system, which will be required simply because the windows sort of are the wall system there, if you will. And we came back in and sort of doing our research a few years ago, we came back in with, a stud wall with metal panel veneer, and we have sort of priced that up at about $120,000. In addition to that, we looked into doing a secure entry vestibule. South Urban does not have that right now. And you can kind of see the sketch on the drawing. It's in the lower right-hand corner there of how a secure entry vestibule would work for South Urban, and getting someone into and through the reception area there. And we also looked at getting the door hardware upgraded. Senate Bill 1 addressed, classroom security, entry into the building security, and being able to cover any kind of vision glass on classroom windows quickly. And so we took a look at that, and there are some ADA issues as well. And we can also take advantage of the work on the hardware to get South Urban on the Grand Master system for the district. And then we also looked at replacing the intercom system there, which I hear is necessary at this time. So our total construction cost for all of this work at South Urban is $391,000, and the project cost would come in around $469,000.
I am not asking you to approve this project as of yet because we've got to approve our Esser 3 budget. But I do want you to consider this project over the next few weeks, and we'll bring it back in September. This is something that everyone needs to remember. We still owe 15 years on that building. So that means for the next 15 years, there will be children in that building. And we need to provide them the same level of safety and comfort that everybody else does. That doesn't mean that building's in terrible shape, but you've been over there. One of the things with COVID-19 is try to allow as much fresh air.
I'm exempt.
Huh?
I'm exempt.
From
Mr.
what?
Shaw was out there dealing with Mr. Taylor.
Don't worry, I won't sneeze in.
With that being said, you've got the next 15 years that kids are going to be in that building. So we'll have security upgrades for that building, along with fresh air being able to come through the windows, and everything is dealing with safety and air quality. But I do think that is a good use of that money, especially for our kids that's located in that building. So that's just for your consideration. We can talk about it in September. If you wanted to do this project, it's something that would have to take place during the summer, which means that it would be a June, July, August type project in order for us to get done. And Peter, have you all looked at a timeline in terms of, are we able to finish it in that time, or would we need to do the front side of the building one summer and then do the back side the next summer? So you sort of need to bring us some timeline
Okay.
on that project. Would you all not agree? so that we would know. But I think that would be a good use of our money.
All right. So if we move on to the next slide or two, I'll move on to the Estill Springs Elementary School renovation and addition. And this is, I'm going to show you two different options here. And the first page, you'll bear with me, it is option one, and it shows a scope and preliminary cost opinion review of doing an addition to the building. It would be a 5,600 square foot classroom and media center addition. You can see it there on the top image on the far right. I've given you a couple of different cost estimates based on KDE's replacement cost, insurance costs that they provide to the districts. KDE is currently has a $243 per square foot, and so that size of an addition would cost per 243 would be $1,360,000. We have seen costs way closer to $300 a square foot in this particular market, so I decided to go on and include that as well, and that's a $1.6 million addition. The renovation of the existing media center, we were able to fit full 3-size classroom spaces into this. And I guess I should have mentioned at the top that we really are, in this particular exercise, we're addressing overcrowdedness at Estill Springs. They have too many students for the number of classroom spaces that they have, so we have a really good opportunity. As you can see, this addition has provided 5 new classrooms to the building, right? Which is what we're sort of proposing here. We are also tacking on some additional work at Estill Springs. It includes doing some work in the gym, replacing the bleacher system that is outdated at this point, and replacing the flooring there as well. It is a VCT tile, I think, is the floor in the gym, possibly original to the building.
Yes.
The door hardware upgrades, interior, it seems to me that we just did a renovation at Estill Springs. Some of you were involved in that. We did address door issues on the 34 doors in the school, but we didn't catch them all. I think when I did my research on this, there are 72 additional doors in the school that are not centralized on the district's system. And so there is some work left to do on the door hardware there. Those are all interior doors. All of the exterior doors were updated at the time of that last renovation. And then included also in this would be, because this particular addition sort of encroaches on the property of Old Urban High School, we would include the demolition with some salvage of Old Urban High School. So you can see that listed there at a cost opinion of about $110,000. We would provide a memorial marker on the grounds for Old Urban High School. That has been estimated about $15,000. I've listed salvaging the wood basketball court for reuse in Estill Springs. That's something that we're still researching. I have included my cost opinion up there for the replacing the flooring. I think that if the wood from the basketball court at Old Urban was used, that would come in right around that, right around that price as well. But I don't have a price or a cost opinion for that at this point. And then finally, and I'll show you a slide here in just a couple of minutes, of some additional parking and paving improvements at Estill Springs that we would do as part of this project as well. So the total construction of this particular project is $2.5 million roughly, and a project cost opinion of just under $3 million. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys have on that one.
Real quick, again, this is not something I'm asking you to approve tonight. This is something you really need to think about in terms of your ESSER 3 money. Part of the scope of using ESSER 3 funding is to reduce class size capacity. Estill Springs is built, I believe, Peter, for right at 470 students. We entered the school year with 520 students in that building. So we're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 515 or 115% capacity for that facility. So it is something that needs to be addressed. It's a little bit difficult to figure out exactly how you want to address it. So we've got a second option you need to think about. When Peter says you're adding 5 full-size classrooms, know that you're losing 1 classroom on the end. So you're gaining 4 classrooms and a special needs classroom. So you're really gaining 4.5 classrooms plus a new media center. And as you can see, the addition does go on the old urban side. Because the addition takes the old urban property, old urban, as we know, we've already discussed it time and time again, it's going to have to be demolished. There's no funding to do anything with that facility. We've sought grants, we've done everything we know to do. So we're doing exactly what the Urban High graduates asked us to do. They said, build us some type of memorial to the building, which we can take the Urban High placard off the front of the building. It's there, I guess it's marble. We can take it, we can salvage the brick from the building and actually use the brick and that monument marker to build some type of monument that would be a memorial to Urban High. And it'll be something that the graduates, have something. There's something there to put it in the history of our community. We're going to use it right where the flagpole's at, is what we're looking at for that. And if we can salvage that gym floor, I think that's just another way to say, hey, this is something we're doing to honor the Urban High Eagles by putting that gym floor into Estill Springs. So this would be one particular way you could address that. Just realize that any normal year, you are going to have 7 kindergartens, you're going to have 7 first grades, and you're going to have 7 second grades. That's 21 classrooms. This building only has 24 classrooms. So by the time you take all the special needs classes and things that they really need, they could use the additional 4 classrooms, even into the future. We don't anticipate, a couple years ago, we saw a dip where we had 1 class that went down to 6. But now all of a sudden, that one has moved all the way through West Urban and going to the middle school next year. We've got 8 kindergartens right now at Estill Springs. And once we get past this surge with this virus and get everybody back in school, we could possibly even have room for 9. But we have nowhere to put 9. So we've got to address this issue. How this would proceed, since part of this is outside of the scope of where the building's at, that could proceed at any time. Once that area is finished, then we can move into the library area and renovate it in a very short period of time, within 4 to 6 weeks, and you would be complete by next school year if you chose to do this project. But it's something you've got to think about. This is option 1. And we would have to use probably somewhere in the neighborhood, we would not want to use Esser funding to pay for the demolition of Old Urban. But we do have general fund dollars, not general fund dollars, but we have capital outlay dollars, over $1 million in capital outlay cash. It's for buildings only that would be used to tear that facility down. So you'd be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.75 million worth of Esser funds for this, the remaining coming out of the capital outlay cash. Yes, ma'am.
Why wasn't the doors addressed, the 70-some odd doors addressed in the original renovation project?
When that project was done, it was not part of House Bill 1. House Bill 1 was passed after that. So the key was at that time is that the board felt we needed to make sure we got all the outside doors and everything secure. Also knowing at that time, Ms. Samples, that we didn't know exactly how much money we had and how much it was going to cost for the ATC and the high school. So it was just sort of delayed. But now we can catch it back up and get everything on the Grand Master system,
Okay, thank you.
which will help it make it for ease of entry for our maintenance people.
Okay, for the old Urban High, if something happens like that, we couldn't use the floor for Estill Springs, just saying. Couldn't we like sell that out to like the,
We talked about that before.
People-
We talked about selling a square of the gym floor for a fundraiser.
Yeah, we could write that within the construction documents that the owner would want to retain the gym floor for, for that purpose. We've had all kinds of people talk about, they'd like to have that. I think our first choice would be, let's
Yeah,
save the
use it,
floor and
save
try to
it.
use it.
Yeah,
I think
I
that
do
would be a great thing if we
I'm
could
just
do
saying
that.
if we could,
It would be something great for the community, but if we can't,
yeah.
we could
Don't
do
just
something
throw it
like that.
away.
It's just a matter of writing it in the construction documents that we want to salvage that. And listen, there probably won't be any floor left if we just move it, because even though it's a full-size floor, you're going to do some damage to
Yeah,
some of
right.
it trying to get it up. So, but if there was flooring left after we got the springs done, then whatever flooring's left is ours. We can
Yeah.
do it. I mean, for that matter, if they're an Urban High graduate, heck, we can give them a piece.
Yeah.
I mean, what's a piece of wood,
I
It's,
just hated to see
Or
it
even
thrown
out of the
away.
hallways of the
Yeah.
building, or the rooms. 'cause
yeah,
that's-
so
that's hardwood.
that's very possible. We would just have to look at what we want to put in the construction documents.
Yeah. I like more.
Peter, if you want to, show them option 2, which is a cheaper option, and,
Yeah, so here we are, option 2, which is this simpler option of adding 2 classrooms to Estill Springs, right? So this would provide some relief to the situation that we talked about and address, spacing children out in the school, which is a big part of what Esser does. We're showing a 2,160 square foot classroom addition, which includes the 2 classrooms and the yellow corridor that you see in the middle. And again, I am showing you 2 different costs, but I think we're safer to roll with that $300 a square foot, so that's about $648,000 there. And we've left the gym and the hardware upgrades from the previous slide on here for this project. The total construction cost opinion is around $840,000 with the project cost opinion of about $1 million. So this is also something that could benefit Estill Springs clearly. And so, Jeremy, if you could go to the next slide. This sort of addresses all of that piece that I showed you in option 1 of Old Urban High School site and the parking and pavement areas of Estill Springs that could be, I guess I would say, renovated, replaced, repaired. And you all can take a look at this slide. We're talking about demolishing Old Urban High School, and we talked about the memorial marker. You can see both of those on here. And we talked about the additional parking and pavement improvements that you can see here. We're talking about milling and overlaying some of the better pavements. We're talking about full depth replacement in other areas. We're talking about demolishing some sidewalks and some driveways that are no longer of much use to the district. Now that the functioning of that storage building, the old pool storage building, has changed a bit, and adding some additional parking that is much needed at Estill Springs, all as part of this restructuring of this site once Old Irving is not on there anymore. And again, our total construction cost opinion for that is $550,000 with a cost opinion of about $660,000. So those 2 things sort of give you an idea of what option 2 at Estill Springs might look like. And Jeremy might have you.
blow it back up, Jeremy, if you don't care.
Yeah.
And just real quick, so you got 2 options here. One is, if you do the library addition and stuff, Old Urban has to go in order to make room for that.
Right.
So we can roll some of this stuff into that project. That's why it's $3 million, okay? If you just build the 2 classrooms on the end, then this has to be pulled out, and we have to use our capital outlay cash to do it. And we'll pull it out. But the big improvements is with widening this entrance and allowing us to be able to stack 3 sets of cars here on that parking area. we know that the city streets back there is a nightmare morning and afternoon, trying to get kids in the buildings and stuff, and that will address that. It will give us the ability to stack those cars in there. So either way, deciding whatever you want to do. If you want to do the new library addition, you're looking at about $3 million. If you want to do the 2 classrooms on the end that's closest to the creek and do this, you're looking at about $1.8 million. So that's your 2 options on how you proceed on that.
But if you do option 1, we'll get more classrooms. I mean, can you do this with option 1? Or is it opposite ends of the building?
With option 1, yes, this is happening with option 1, no matter what, yes.
With option 1, we get more classrooms.
Yeah, and you're rolling this into option 1.
All right.
If you don't build option 1, then this becomes a separate project.
Right.
And you know, my personal opinion is, I mean, you all think about it in terms, like I said before, does 2 classrooms really help them? If you look at the fact they're going to be, in any normal year, they're going to be using 21 of their 24 classrooms. By the time they have a couple grant programs, you've got a speech teacher, you've got 4 special ed teachers, you've got interventionists. There's a lot of space there that's needed to operate an elementary school. I mean, it's just a simple fact. And so it's one of those deals that I personally think, if you all feel comfortable with the money and the budget we'll look at here in a minute, if you feel comfortable with that, then what we would do is we would move forward with option 1. If you don't, we move forward with option 2. Again, we could do this at any time. You would do everything that's the add-on first, and then the inside work would happen in the summer. You could actually start this project. If you don't want to start it this year, you can start it next and finish it the following year. But if it's something you wanted to do, I don't know what Peter's and them's times are, but a time frame to get everything approved, it'd probably be Christmas or later, getting it approved. It's doable. It's very doable to have it ready to open next fall. But if you don't want to get into that, because of high school and everything else, we could wait till next year and do it then and let them wait 1 more year.
Is there a timeline on spending the Esser funds?
You have 3 years
There was
from
a time
this
frame.
October. It has to be spent by October of '24.
But we would, even if we didn't have the project complete, if we were in the process, that would count.
It would need to be done by October of '24. Everything would have to be expended by October 1. And that's what's so hard, everybody doesn't understand with school finances. We're on 3 different calendars. Our school year ends June 30th. Payroll and everything ends on January 1. Federal money ends on October 1, and it just makes it very difficult to understand. But you could do it this year, or you could do it next year and still meet the timeline. But it's just food for thought. What do you want to do here? How do you want to proceed? It's a small enough project that there's plenty of smaller contractors that could take on a project this size.
So could we have a special called meeting and come back and make decisions on these other projects?
Yes. Or you can do it at the September meeting. We can call a
Because
special called meeting just for projects,
I
yes.
think that we would need to do that because there's a lot of thought that has to go into this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Right.
ifs and ands and ors and buts about this, so.
You all direct me how you would want to do on that. I was already going to ask you to move the September meeting back 1 week because I won't be available on the normal scheduled week. We was going to move it back. So that would mean the first week of October, somewhere in there would be available. Or we could do it the second week of September before I'm actually gone for a while.
Yeah, I just think this needs a special called meeting.
That would be
to-
3
to
weeks from now if you all want
discuss all
to
these
schedule
things.
something for 3 weeks from now.
I think so.
And we don't need board action to schedule a special called meeting, but you all want me to shoot you some dates? And we'll just come back on that, okay?
Please.
Tanya, if you could make a note on that, and we will set a special called meeting date. Peter, can you make
Absolutely.
And does all of these projects, our committee that we had that had to do with our construction and all those, do we have to consult that committee to move forward with these projects? Because
These are all part of your current facility plan.
That's
Each
what
one
I'm
of these
asking.
items are on there, is it not, Peter?
that's what I'm asking about the facility plan, that committee. Do we have to
That's it.
reconvene that committee to be able to
We'll let Peter check
Move
into
forward.
it.
with these
I will look
projects?
into that. I'm not sure how, the Esser funds are an interesting funding source, right? So I would need to look into that. I think that there's a lot of funding available for districts to move in ways that they may not have anticipated needing to move when their district facility plans were put together. Let me get the answer for you, and
I know that there's an addition at Estill Springs that's on the facility plan.
There it is,
I was on
yes.
that committee, and that's what I was,
The problem, we would have to check on South Irvin because South Irvin was classified as a building in
It
transition.
was, yeah.
And does that matter since we're using ESSER funds? That's a
Exactly.
question that
That's
you've
the
got to,
question. That's what I think
That needs to be
it may not.
clarified.
so that's a
and if we're
question.
gonna have to keep that building for that much longer, I mean, do we need to reconvene facilities? And
We
that
could.
school doesn't need to be a school in transition if we're gonna put more money into it.
We could make it a
They
permanent
change
site, yes. The only thing that you would have to make sure of is if you put it in as a permanent site, then do you have to bring it back up to current codes?
Right.
That could be an issue, but it's basically at the codes that's
Yeah,
there.
Yeah. Mhm.
That building's in fantastic shape, except for the windows. The windows stink. I
We put
mean,
a lot into that school
Yeah.
there, so.
Yes.
that's why you still got a bond payment for 15 years on it, so they would definitely frown if you wanted to close it tomorrow.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
So
So-
if you could check about that,
I will.
Peter, that would be great.
We can have that answer, and if we need to reconvene the LPC, we can.
Yep.
And then we can have our special called meeting to finalize and address all of this.
Right.
And we would have answers by then.
Yes.
I think we could, yeah.
Okay? I think that's a good plan.
I think so too.
Okay. Do we want to review these last two real quick, just as an introduction?
Yeah, let's, I know number 7 is something I think the board has talked about long enough that we need to consider whether we want to move forward on it, since we're paying cash for it.
Right, so the last sort of Esser project that we were asked to look at were plumbing upgrades in the restrooms and locker rooms at the middle school. And we did take a look at, I think it's 12 different areas that we would look to renovate with new plumbing fixtures and new interior finishes. We looked at plumbing upgrades in the restrooms and locker rooms coming in at around $170,000. That's for the new plumbing fixtures, sort of a replacement, one for one, as it were. And then interior finishes for about 4,000 square feet of the school. And then we also went on to this school is not on the centralized key and grandmaster system for the district. So we took a look at that, and I was stunned at how many doors there are in the
Oh,
school.
yes.
It's a school full of doors, and so you can see that the cost estimate there came in at right around $150,000. And so to do all of this work, we had a total construction cost of about $500,000 and a cost opinion for the project at about $600,000.
As you know, we recently had the middle school looked at by an independent contracting, or an independent engineering firm. We know what the issues have been at the middle school. Every time you go to a different group, I was at the Kiwanis here talking a while back, and it came up about the middle school. The restrooms have probably suffered the most from some of the movement from the pyritic shell in that building. And what the reason being is because when you've got ceramic tile on a wall that's moving, it's going to break. This is also during the same time when everybody got the great ideas, hey, let's quit using metal partitions, we're going to use concrete block. for restroom petitions. Well, of course, that didn't go over too well either in that particular case. And then, of course, there's tile on the flooring as well. All those things could be taken care of, as you know. I won't be here, and I don't know if you all will be sitting on the board 15, 16 years from now, but at that point in time, somebody will have to figure out what we're going to do about a new middle school, because that will be the one school that will have to be addressed in the future. Remember your bonding potential, and you'll see it here in a minute. Your bonding potential is going to be pretty low until about 2035. That's when West Irving comes off. That's also about the time Estill Springs starts going off. So you're going to have money at that point in time to replace the middle school. That's for another board. That's for another superintendent.
That's 14 years.
Yeah, yeah. The only good thing is that we've given them the property. This board bought the property that will allow them to do that. So this is probably something, guys, that's very needed. It will make that middle school, especially think about the comfort level for our students when it comes into going into those restrooms and the shape that they're in. They're not terrible, but they're not what they need to be. And we need to upgrade the fixtures on it. Then the door and hardware upgrades, that's part of House Bill, or Senate Bill 1 again, for the safety part of this. And this, if we do all these, it puts everything in this district on one key. So Todd Reese can take one key and open every classroom, every door in this whole facility. Now, if those keys won't be handed out, those keys won't be handed out to just anybody. But that is a great feature for this school district. So this is something that I would strongly encourage us to do. I believe this is something that could be done during the summer on a 10 or 12-week time schedule. If it's something you wanted to do this coming summer, again, you're talking about a plumbing contractor and you're talking about a flooring contractor mainly, maybe just a little bit of general contracting, but you're not talking about a keying company, something like Atlas or somebody. So you're not talking about a large group of people here that's going to come in, tear a building up and keep it tore up for 3 years. It's going to be something that could be done in a summertime. If it's something you want to do, it's not something you got to move on tonight. But if it's something you want to do and you want to look at the summer, again, you've got all the restroom equipment and all that you would need to do. There's got to be a design time. So it is something you could do this coming summer, and your kids at the middle school could have new restroom facilities that would provide a different level of comfort. So again, we're tabling it, but it's food for thought, okay?
And not that it, because I'm very confident that this renovation is listed on the current district facility plan. So, all
I
right.
think South Irvin's the only issue we've got on the facility plan, to be honest.
Right. So the last slide, Jeremy, if you will. This is West Irvin parking lot improvements, addition and improvement. And this is showing a new parking lot, if you can, to sort of plan east of the existing one. It's already an area that's gravel that I'm sure a lot of people use to park. And we're showing 76 additional parking spaces and sidewalk and stair connections to the main entry from both ends of that particular parking lot in this scenario. And the anticipated project budget is around $370,000.
It's got sidewalks and walkways, and we'll even extend the sidewalks from the school building to make sure that everybody can have egress in and out of the building. It also allows you to perhaps use the bottom set of doors on the lower level, so they could really have two different dismissals. That, again, this street is a nightmare during dismissal.
Congestion.
So if you've got fifth grade dismissing up here in the big parking lot, and third grade dismissing down here in the bottom, you're going to get rid of a lot of traffic. And it's going to help the community, I believe, as well as providing additional parking for open houses and different things. So that is something that we have talked about for the last 3 years. It goes all the way back to two board cycles ago in terms of, I think when Mr. Beckley was on the board, I know Hinkle Contracting donated a lot of the gravel and stuff that there was nothing there until they done the gravel donation. He was instrumental in helping get that done. But we've not done anything since then except pave a little section there off of the street. What is that? Is that Rice Street? What is the name of that street?
Rice Street is Estill Springs.
That's Estill Springs. This one here,
Riverview.
Riverview. Okay, so with Riverview being there, we did do a little paving beside it. I always ask the mail carrier what street.
Oh, yes, she knows.
So I really believe this is something we should move forward on. This is also something that we would be spending capital outlay cash on. And I don't know where y'all are at tonight, but, you know, my recommendation would be if you feel comfortable on this, I think we need to go ahead and get this started. You possibly could have this blacktopped and done by Thanksgiving. Could we get it that quick, or would it be the spring?
You know, I need to check with Michael on that first, just to make sure what the drawings would be.
But we definitely could have it by the spring if you all want to move on this. And this is what we said we were going to use our capital outlay cash reserves for anyway. So if you just have to tell me, do you want Michael to proceed and us get a BG1 on it? If we can do it in the fall, do it in fall. If not, we can push it to spring. If you're not sure and you want to wait and do it during the special called board meeting, that will probably push it to the spring. Doesn't matter to me. But I do think it's something that needs to be done. It cannot be Esser funding. This has got nothing to do
So
with.
is something that you're saying we can pull out right now and make a motion on?
We could make a motion on this right now to have Peter put together a BG1 and move forward with this parking lot.
Is that what you're recommending?
That is my recommendation to do so. We've talked about it for
A long time?
6 years, ever since I've been here.
Okay. So Mr. Saylor's made a recommendation that we move forth with the new parking lot at West Urban Intermediate. And I'd like to call for a motion.
Make the motion.
Carrie
Second.
Smallwood makes a motion. Sheila Samples makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Proceed, Peter. Get the
Miss
BG1.
Isaacs, as the former principal, does that make you happy?
Yes, it does, absolutely. Very much needed.
Yes, it is. Has been for a long
Needed
time.
for day one.
One, yes.
Well, I think it was one of those things that, of course, the district struggled with bonding potential at that time, and I believe it was part of the original plan and had to be pulled out
Right.
I think so too.
because of funding. So we're able now, again, why can we do this? People of Estill County in the recallable nickel. If it wasn't for the recallable nickel, you wouldn't be doing it today.
I just don't see any sense in putting this project off any longer.
No.
It's been
No.
hashed and talked about.
For years.
Back and forth, and we just need to move forward with it.
The West Urban community ought to be celebrating that because it's been needed for a long time and we can get it done. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So is that everything you have for
That
us,
is
Peter?
everything. You guys were great, super patient with me. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you for your time. Be careful on the road.
All right.
Okay, we're down to our action items.
One more, the school
the
facilities
bonding.
bonding, it's just an update,
I'm
won't take a
sorry, I
second.
missed
No,
that.
you're good. Jeremy, if you'll pull that up, thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
If you can pull that up real quick, I know we talked in all this when we did the high school project. We'd like to at least have about $1 million worth of bonding potential if the need arises. So Mark did an analysis, and you can see it here. It's a very simple analysis that we have. And this is based not only on our bonding potential. Now, this does not take into account any SFCC offers that could come down the pike at some point in time that we could use. We just have to be careful with that because you remember last time we got into the fact that it caused us to restrict all of our money and we had to back up and rescind it. But based on his analysis, it shows you what our funding sources are down there as our bondable revenues. And it shows you at the very top what our current bonding summary is. So right now, as of today, and he did this very conservatively, it's based on a lot higher interest rate than what we just were able to obtain. You can see that we've got right at $1,030,000 in bonding potential if we got in a bind or somebody in the future got in a bind. Now remember, that number will go up as the legislature meets every 2 years because of equalization and all the things that comes about by SEEK. That amount of money will go up with time, but that's what we currently have. So I just wanted to bring that back to you today to let you see that. And everything we talked about in the previous item has nothing to do with that money. We don't have to touch that money. It's there. Or it's there for us to borrow on. That's our line of credit, is basically what it is. It's not real dollars. It's a line of credit for $1 million. Any questions? Thank you, guys.
Okay. We'll move on now to our action items. Mr. Saylor, do you want to go over those?
Yeah, we'll start with real estate and personal property tax. And we've had discussions on this previously about what our current property tax rate is, 51.1 cents. Pull up the very first document, Jeremy. This right here is the real estate tax rates of all the local school districts surrounding us this past year. This was what everybody was assessed on in the fiscal year FY21, okay? So you can see Estill's tax rate currently stands at 51.1 cents, and then you can start down the list with Breathitt, and you go on down the list, and you keep going down the list, and the first place you can find somebody that has a lower tax rate is Lee County at 49.2 cents. Then you can keep going on down and going down, and the next place you find with a lower tax rate is Owsley County at 50.8, and then Powell County is now at 50.6, and congratulations to Powell County Board of Education. They passed a recallable nickel this past year, and their tax rate went from 44-something to 50.6, but they now have the ability to start moving forward with some of their construction facility needs. So congratulations to that board and their superintendent for doing the right thing for kids. And then, of course, Wolfe County is sitting at 37.5. So as you can see, by our current tax rate, we are the fourth lowest tax rate of any school district surrounding us. Then we can go back to HIT Report 1, Jeremy. I think that's the one we want to look at. And it shows you what your compensating rate is. If we wanted to collect the same amount of tax dollars that we did last year, we could set our real estate tax at 49.7 and the general fund personal property tax, which is tangible property, would be at 50.3. And you can see subsection 1, and then you could see what it would be if you took the 4% increase, which would be at a rate of 51.6. What we did during the budget process, guys, is that we told the public we were going to freeze the tax rate, we would not raise taxes. And what has happened over this year, you say, well, why is the compensating rate less? That's because we've had over $14 million worth of new property that's been assessed in our county. So, again, my greatest fear, and we talked about this in the budget, and I'll make it short, is that if we lower the tax rate, I'm not worried about this year. We've got $8 million worth of Esser funds that we talked about, different projects and stuff. I am worried about the future of this school district when you start going backwards. And I'll be honest, my statement to you all is I think it would be irresponsible for us, based on the fact that there'll be a new board sitting here in 2 years, and there'll be a new superintendent sitting here in 2 years, and I do not want that person to be harsh at me for the fact that we did the wrong thing when it comes to tax rates. We told the community we would not raise property tax rates, And that's my recommendation to you. I believe that we should keep the property tax rate at 51.1 cents for real estate and 51.1 cents for personal property. Now, you're saying, well, how much extra money does that generate? It does generate, and I think I may have left my notes upstairs. It does generate about an extra $55,000 to $70,000 based on collection rates. But when we advertise, because we're not taking the compensating rate, we would have to have a hearing. And Jeremy, if you could go down to the, set the tax hearing date. Go across, go to that one right there, and there's an advertisement there. And you can see in that advertisement, if you'll blow it up, that very second to last line says, there is no expected increase above 2021 revenue. Let me tell you why that is. Remember what happened in March of 20? COVID hit. So a lot of people had a hard time getting to the courthouse and paying their taxes and doing the things they needed to do because the courthouse was closed. So this past fall, when tax rates come about, people started paying their previous year taxes along with their current taxes. So we actually took in more money than we were supposed to. It wasn't the fact that everybody decided to give an extra $20. It was just the fact we were catching up from the COVID year. So it shows on here that you're not going to generate any additional revenue. That's not necessarily the case. That's why I want you to, for full disclosure, we'll take in somewhere between $55,000 to $70,000 additional dollars based on collection rate. But it's not going to show up in that tax hearing advertisement because of the fact that we took in past taxes that people were not able to pay because they couldn't get to the courthouse to pay them. Does that make sense? So my recommendation is the board that we set our tax rate and we leave it froze at 51.1 cents for real estate and for tangible property. And that's my recommended motion.
Which is what we did last year.
That's what we did last year, and that's what we've done the previous 2 years now. We've kept it the same. And that's what we told everybody. When we passed a recallable nickel, we said we will not raise taxes. We'll try to keep the tax rate as it is, and we've honored that promise every year.
So are you recommending?
51.1 cents on real estate and on tangible.
Okay. Do we have a motion? So Tammy Hardy makes a motion. Do we have a second? Miss Carrie Smallwood makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed?
Okay, go back
Motion
to real estate and that one, Jeremy, and hit number 1 again. Report 1, and if you'll look, go down to the bottom of that, go right here. Right here. This maximum tax rate for motor vehicles. Our motor vehicle rate for years has been 54.8 cents. Ever since I've been here, it's been 54.8 cents. And the few years that I found before that, it's been 54.8 cents. So it's not changed over a long period of time. So my recommendation to you all that for motor vehicles and watercraft, we set the tax rate at 54.8 cents, which is no change as well.
So
And that
I'd
is my recommendation.
like to call for a motion.
I make the motion.
Shayla Samples makes a motion. Tammy Hardy makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and I'll just take the next one real quick on set a tax hearing date. We have 45 days from the day we received this to get this done. We're fortunate to have Judge Watson with us here tonight, and he's waiting. It's got to go before the fiscal court as well so we can get tax bills printed. So we have to have a hearing because we did not take the compensating rate. So we will be advertising of that, and you can go back to the notice of hearing, Jeremy, and I believe that we have to,
September 23rd.
yeah, we have to advertise the 2 weeks before that, which of course, I left my one notebook, guys, and I apologize, but I can look at the calendar real quick.
Mr. Saylor, can I run and get it, please?
I just need to give them the dates that the advertisement's going to run, so it'll be fine. Thank you for offering. But we'll run in the paper, we have to run it on September the 9th, and we have to run it on September the 16th, and then 7 days later, we have to have the hearing, which will be the night of the 23rd, which will be the board meeting for September. It's going to be a special called board meeting. And we'll have the hearing at 5:30 for anybody that's in the public that wants to address the tax rate. And then we'll call our meeting to order at 6 o'clock, and you will have to vote one more time to confirm the tax rate, okay? But that's the process. So just letting you all know that on the 23rd will be at 5:30 for the tax hearing. Does anybody have any questions about that? There's no action on that. I hope that's as plain as mud. Or clear as mud, is that?
Clear as mud.
Clear as mud, not plain as.
Mud is mud.
So that's it on tax rates, Ms. Isford.
I was putting that in my calendar. Okay. So moving right along, we have a report on Young Smiles Dental.
This is a group that we've used in the past to provide dental services for our students. And we would like to go ahead and use this group again. If you remember back in the spring, we wrote a letter of support for White House Clinics for a mobile dental unit. They're still in the process of that application process, and it may very well be in the spring before they'll actually know. Well, we've got kids that need dental services right now. This group's provided good service in the past. If they have a dentist in the county, or they currently have a dentist, they refer them to the dentist for that work. They refer them to their home dentist. If they don't, then with permission, they can work on students' teeth. You know, if they have fillings or cleanings or whatever it may be. We've used them in the past. Michael Flynn, our Youth Service Center Director at the middle school, is very excited about getting this up and going. And Michael will help us keep that going. Mr. Norton is now taking care of all the friskies, and I know they'll be excited to get this going. So I do need your all's approval for us to enter into a contract this year with Young Smiles Dental.
Okay, I'd like to call for a motion for Young Smiles Dental to provide services to our students. Carrie Smallwood makes a motion. Do we have a second? Tammy Hardy makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item C on our agenda is to consider policy updates, which includes certified and classified emergency leave, administrative procedures. And Mr. Saylor, would you like to review that with everyone?
Yeah, I probably should have switched these two items. D should have been C, and they should have been opposite, but I did not do that. As you all know, the state board approved by emergency regulation, emergency leave, quarantine leave. And this is a resolution for that act that the board would need to approve. You don't necessarily have to approve it. KSBA has recommended that we approve it. And what this allows is if an employee is quarantined based on exposure to COVID-19, as long as they've been vaccinated, they could receive leave for those days that they're under quarantine. But the minute they get their test result back, if they're negative, of course, they return to work. If they're positive, they cannot return to work. But at that point in time, which is, I'm still dumbfounded that they did it this way because it's totally different from what they did in the spring. And Jonathan told me today that Grant he is the expert on all this COVID relief and everything like that. He's been dealing with it. But last year, if that employee had tested positive, then emergency leave days covered them until they came back. That's no longer the case. Now, if they test positive, they have to use their sick leave. And I really feel bad about that, because if we've had an employee, which about 80% of our employees are vaccinated, if we have an employee that went the extra mile, got vaccinated, and then they have a breakthrough infection, and it has happened a couple of times already, then they've got to use their sick leave time. Well, we can't go any further than what I've asked you to do in item C. Our board has never had a policy for emergency leave, but you can have a policy for emergency leave. So what we're asking you to do, and Jonathan and them have reviewed this is a policy that came from KSBA, and what we're telling everybody, if we have a vaccinated employee that tests positive, or a vaccinated employee that has somebody in their household that is sick in their house, we're not talking about a relative that lives 10 houses down or up on the next holler, we're talking about in their household, the board could grant them 3 emergency leave days. Or if you approve the policy, I can grant those days. It would come through my desk, I would have to approve it, they would have to fill out an application in order to get those 3 days. Now, that employee that tests positive could be out 8 days. Now, they're going to have to use 5 sick days. But I could grant them 3 that says, hey, you did the right thing. This is our way of helping you hang on to some of your sick leave. So that's where this is coming from. If you all feel like, I do think it would be something good. If you did not get vaccinated, you are not eligible for this emergency leave. The only way you're eligible is you were vaccinated, or you have a documented medical excuse from a physician that is a legit reason for not being vaccinated in order to access this.
Okay, what about religion? Because that comes into play.
Grant, do you have
Religion
anything to
is in
share?
there. I'll let Grant chime in, and I'll tell you what Dr. Glass has said. Dr. Glass says that there'll be no exemption for anybody on a religious standing on mask wearing and on these types of things.
Grant, do you have anything to share?
There's not a whole lot more than that to share. The EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, does say that there's potential for religious exemption for if an employer was to decide to mandate vaccination, then you would have to give a religious exemption and a medical exemption. Since this isn't making vaccines mandatory, it is just
Based on mandatory.
it's just a qualifying factor before you can use this leave. So you're not trying to coerce somebody to go against their religious beliefs in order to qualify. It's their choice still. The medical exemption is still required by the Americans with Disabilities Act. So you don't have to have a religious exemption under this policy, because it's just a qualifying factor. It's not a coercive, compulsory vaccination.
It's just, yes, you got the vaccine and you can have the days, or no, you didn't get it, so you don't qualify.
Right. Black and white.
And there's a bad myth out there right now that's, we had a former Board of Education, a State Board of Education member that has really petitioned school districts, well, just give those employees that's vaccinated, give them an extra 10 sick days this year. And Wayne Young has weighed in on that pretty heavily from KSA and said, if you give additional sick days, you got to give them across the board. You can't pick and choose who gets additional sick days, who doesn't get additional sick days. This right now is the only vehicle that we have to pretty much say, you tried to do the right thing, it didn't work out, we can help you this much. And that's about what it does. Grant, you agree with that analysis?
I do. And we're just piggybacking off of what the state board did by saying, this is a thing that's available to you if you're vaccinated. We're drawing the same distinction that they did. So that's not the most we can do.
So my recommendation is we approve this. It says right on the policy when you pull them up, you can pull up either one of them, Jeremy, if you want to, there under those policies. Both of them are worded exactly the same. It's just, I probably right there. Both of them's worded exactly the same in terms of it's 3 days. It's for the 21-22 school year. So that means on June 30th, this is gone. If we're still dealing with COVID next fall, I've got to stick around one more year, but I swear I don't want to have to deal with it no more. But the bottom line is, if we want to extend this again, we'll have to come back in June and approve it again, okay? For it's 1 year only. There's a form for them to fill out.
So, so we ask for C and D?
Let's do C because it's a change in board policy, and then we'll
Okay.
come back and ask you to approve the resolution. So the first motion is to approve certified and classified emergency leave for FY '22 only.
Okay.
Did you all discuss, sorry to interrupt, but did you all discuss declaring an emergency to make that, to waive the second reading and only do that by one reading tonight? Or are you going to bring it back to your September for the special meeting to get the second reading?
Can we make it retroactive either way to the beginning of the school year, or do we make it effective right now through that emergency reading?
You can make it effective right now if you declare an
Right
emergency
now.
and waive the second reading.
Can it be retroactive to August the 3rd, 4th?
Disfavored but not improper as you can.
Okay.
Anything that's a fringe benefit, you're really supposed to have adopted before the school year started, but things have been so muddy and the spike hit us so fast that I don't think there's anybody telling you don't do that.
So Grant, the motion then would be to approve the emergency leave FY '22 only on an emergency basis, effective immediately after this reading,
To waive the second reading.
to waive the second reading and approve it immediately. So that's the motion.
So, you all have heard the motion. I'd like to call,
I make my,
Sheila makes a motion, all right?
I'll second.
And Tammy Hardy makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And then D, the recommended motion there would be is that we approve the resolution recognizing that the state board approved emergency leave for quarantine individuals that have received the vaccination.
Okay, I'd like to call for a motion.
I make the motion.
Sheila makes a first, Tammy Hardy makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we are down to consent and action items.
These are all pretty straightforward. We did have to do an update to our virtual academy waiver. Again, if anybody is listening, the virtual academy, in order to get admission to the virtual academy, is that you have to have an underlying medical condition. The student or a member of the family living in the household, the period in order to apply for that was back in July and August, and that deadline has passed for the fall semester. If this does continue and we have issues moving on into the spring, the next enrollment period opens in December. When's it open again?
We will open the application in October, close
Okay.
at the end of October. November, we will do the interviews with families, and they will have a decision in early December.
Thank you for correcting me on that, Mr. Norton. So anybody that's applying for the spring semester, again, that just because you have to have a qualifying medical reason not to be there, or you have to have, for instance, grandma is living in your household and she's recovering from open heart surgery, or she's a cancer survivor and is on chemo, that type of thing, in order for you to be in a virtual academy. And again, so everybody knows, we don't do this because this is what we want to do. We're under guidelines and policies and procedures by the Kentucky Board of Education, and we can only operate within those procedures. We cannot go contrary to what they have placed in policy. And this past spring, the legislature made it very clear that they wanted students back in in-person instruction. So everything we're doing is based on the fact that we have been returned to previous attendance guidelines and school day recommendations by the state. And until there is communication that takes place between legislative leadership and the governor, and they can sit down, hopefully, and have some common sense measures to give school districts relief, our hands are tied, plain and simple. And we're trying our best to mitigate the circumstances of COVID-19 the best we can under the current circumstances. So I'm making calls to legislators. I am making calls to our superintendent's group. I am making those calls. I encourage our parents to make those calls, because the first thing that, and we'll talk about here, we're getting ready to go in closed session, and we won't be there long because we got public comment after that. I'm sure that's what you're here for. We'll be glad to have public comment, but I'll just make it plain and simple. We can't go contrary to the rules and the procedures and guidelines that we're given. If we could have remote instruction, we would consider remote instruction. Right now, we're not allowed to have remote instruction like we did last year. There are no paper pencil packets, there's no
And the only
going home
way that
computers.
they could make that change right now is for Frankfurt to have a special called session, correct?
Or they agree
Or
and
they
let the
agree.
governor do it by
Let
executive
the governor
order.
do it by executive order.
That's the only way they can do it,
And
yes.
I'd encourage parents to look at House Bill 208 for clarification of exactly what that means.
House Bill 208 was the House bill that put us back in this situation that we're currently sitting in. So there's going to be some things you're going to have to do here in a minute during the discussion, during the superintendent's report in terms of school calendar. You're going to have to give us some options. We're going to, it's easy to say, call off school. Well, we've got 170 school days we've got to go to,
And
so
only 10
But we
days.
do have 10 NTI days.
we do have 10 NTI days that we can use. So we'll discuss all that here in a minute, but the best thing that could happen is if everybody would just put politics aside, do what's common sense, which is what I talked about at the ATC dedication ceremony. And if legislative leaders and the governor can get together and come to an agreement, we need relief as a school district, plain and simple. And until we get relief as a school district, we're just like any other entity. We have to follow the rules as they are given to us by law.
And Representative Bill Wesley is our representative for this district, and Brandon Storm is our senator for this district.
And I'm happy to report that Senator Storm is out of the hospital and doing a lot better. He was also, was infected with COVID-19 and did spend some time in the hospital, but he's doing better. So that's pretty much where we're at with the Virtual Academy waiver. I knew everybody was going to have a question about Virtual Academy. Then we got the Kip Survey that our students take every year. There's 4 different grade levels, 3 different grade levels?
6, 8, 10, and 12.
6, 8, 10, and 12 that they'll be taking that survey. So I ask you all to approve those with one motion.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the consent items A through D?
I make a motion.
Sheila Samples makes a motion. Do we have a second? Tammy Hardy makes a second. I'd like to call for a vote at this time. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, at this time, I would need a motion to go into closed session.
I make the motion.
We have a motion by Sheila Samples to go into closed session. Do we have a second? Carrie Smallwood. All in favor? Any opposed?
And
We will try to be
we
very
won't
short.
be too long. We should be less than, hopefully, if we go 30 minutes, I might scream.
So if everyone wants to just step out into the hallway, we'll be very brief.
Thank you all.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone back from our closed session that has ended after 29 minutes, and I would like to report that there was no action that was taken at that time. We are down to the superintendent's report.
Okay, as usual, you have a copy of your personnel actions during the last month. Also, just a reminder, the KSBA regional meeting is scheduled for Monday, September 13th. I will not be able to attend that night, but if you all want to attend, I think it's going to be, right now, they're doing it in person. So I'm not sure if I had my hours in, I'll leave it up to you all. But if you all do want to go, it is in Hazard on September the 13th. And if you do want to go, you need to contact Rebecca by next Friday in order for us to let them know whether or not we're coming or not, or if anybody is coming. Then we got a return to school update, and there was some things that you all asked for. If you look at the very first one was current enrollment numbers. We have those for you, and if you want to click on that, Jeremy. All the way down under superintendent's report, item C1, which is current enrollment numbers. And you'll have to rotate that, and it shows where we're at. Now, this was only up through about a week ago. Right there, Jeremy. There you go, brother. This was as of the 16th, and of course, we're on now 3 more days past this. We have had several kids or several parents that have chosen to put their kids in homeschool. And right now, the main reason is the surge in the virus. I've received very few calls from any parent that has said, I'm taking my child out because they have to wear a mask. Those calls have been less than 3. So I just wanted to make that clear. Those are in enrollment numbers. As you know, in COVID updates, if everyone goes to our website, our COVID numbers are right there for everybody to see. We're one of few school districts that are still abiding by the previous order that allows you to see exactly how many active cases we currently have. You also, all you have to do to go to one of the news items, Jeremy, if you'll back up and just go back to the website, and if you go scroll all the way down to the news items, right here is the middle apple right there on top says COVID-19 data, and it tells us how many kids we currently have in quarantine. Now, how many kids that are positive, how many kids that are in quarantine, and you can see those current numbers. We update that within 24 hours of all cases. So you can see the number of new cases, in terms of today. We're reporting 1 new positive. Now, I'm not sure if Erica has got everything in there as of today because she was at the high school today. There's 14 active cases at the high school, and you can see them are 7 middle school, 15 at West Irvin, and you can see the totals there. So currently, right now, we have 41 students that are actively, has an active COVID-19 infection. You can see the total number positive since the start of school, which is getting close to 50. And then you see the number of contacts or the number of students that are in quarantine, which is a little bit over 400 right now. Students that are virtual, we have no virtual students or students that are on remote instruction right now. We have some students that are in virtual school, which again, we just didn't take that column out because it would have meant that we had to change the whole thing. So when you see students that are virtual, there are no students that are remote. And Jeremy, I don't know if we can change that virtual to remote because there are no remote students, and it doesn't really, virtual is the wrong thing for it to stay there.
I'll make Erica has access to this sheet, for privacy reasons, I will contact and notify that area. We'll get that changed.
Well, it would be great if we could just eliminate that middle column, because everybody gets on, oh, why ain't they got none virtual? Because it's not part of reporting anymore. So if we can get rid of it, it just causes confusion. So there shouldn't be anything in the middle section anyway, but then you can see the number of staff. There are no new staff members, and there hasn't been any for the last few days. There's been 5 total staff members that have active cases right now, and it looks like we've had 7 total. And we have 2 that are on quarantine right now, and both of those is probably at the district level, because what we have found out, we had a staff member that was taking care of a child that had COVID that had been vaccinated. The teacher had been vaccinated, the child had not, and because they were with that child 24 hours a day in their home, all of a sudden the teacher has a breakthrough case and tests positive. So we felt like that if a teacher was at home, regardless of vaccination status, taking care of a well child, they did not need to be back in school teaching until both of those issues were solved. So both of those are quarantined right now, and that's at the district level. So that's sort of where we stand at. As I said earlier, we're functioning under the guidelines that we're given to function under right now. Everybody wants to know why we don't have remote. We're not allowed to have remote. Everybody wants to know why this kid's being quarantined and that kid's not. We do not put kids under quarantine. I put a couple of staff members under quarantine, and we're allowed to do that. But all quarantines come from the health department. Whenever a child tests positive, we're notified who tested positive. The school district does contact tracing because that's what KDE has told us that we have to do. We notify the health department who the close contacts are, and then the health department puts them under quarantine order. I hope our parents do understand that that is an order, that those students are supposed to stay home. Now, we're not coming out to enforce that, but if somebody did want to enforce that, that is enforceable by law. If the health department puts a child under quarantine, they are supposed to stay home for that quarantine period. So I just want everybody to understand that. Again, that's by state law. Health department determines who goes on quarantine, who doesn't go on quarantine. And we work with the health department to do that. I don't want to place the health department in a situation, well, Mr. Saylor's blaming the health department. I'm not blaming the health department. I'm blaming COVID-19. That is the enemy here. The health department's not. So that is where we're at in terms of a COVID update. Now, everybody asks, okay, what is our response? What are we going to do if cases keep going out of control? You go back to the website, the big box. That's our 5-tiered response plan. All schools currently, you can see it right up at the top in red, all schools in the entire district is in level 2, which means that we have specific classrooms. We don't have an entire grade level yet or an entire school that's been placed in quarantine. Now, if certain conditions arise, as superintendent, I can say West Irvin, all 3rd graders have to stay home. If we see that there's multiple cases in 3rd grade, at that point in time, I can put students in quarantine. But I'm not putting individual students in quarantine. We're going to base that on the data that we have. The next level 3 is really that's based on staff members or food service or transportation. If we had 5 bus drivers tomorrow come down with COVID-19, we can't transport kids. We're going to have to do something. We can't have school if we can't transport them. So that's what level 3 handles. And then level 4 is when the numbers get to such a point that I have to know in my heart we can't continue. Are we there yet? No. Are we getting closer to that point, in my opinion? Yes. At some point in time, we're going to start seeing those quarantine numbers level out because we're going to have kids coming back. We've been in school 11 days. We're going to have kids start coming back as kids start going on quarantine, so that number is going to lower. It's going to level out and lower at some point, and that's where it's going to be. But you know, if we continue to see a ton of positive cases for students, at some point in time, as superintendent, I have to say that's it. We're going to close school for a period of time. And let me make it very clear. It says in level 4, if we close down school for COVID-19 related illness, then at that time, all activities stop. All sports, band, academic team, everything stops. That has been our policy for the last 6 years. If we called off for flu, we did not have activities. And everybody's got to realize that. So there's no way around those things. We're not going to have sports when we can't have kids in school. And there's nobody that's a bigger sports fan than I am. So we just need to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing. It's right there in black and white, everything that we're doing to try to mitigate this and protect kids. The last thing I would point you to, go back to the website, Jeremy, and the other box that you see is the safe return to schools. It'll take just a second for that to close. Right there it is, the safe return to in-person instruction. That's got all the mitigation strategies that we're doing in terms of cleaning the classrooms, how we're seating kids. You got an email from one of your principals today that says, here's the steps we're taking. Those are the same steps that's happening in every building. So we're going to try to beat this thing back while still doing what we have to do based on what the state mandate is in terms of how we count attendance, the number of days of school and everything like that. But I want everybody to know, if we get to that point, if we don't start seeing numbers improve, we're going to have to take a break. We're going to have to take some days off. And that's coming. So, unless we see a turnaround. How are we going to see turnaround? We're going to have to start see vaccinations. If we don't see vaccinations, we're going to continue to live in this. It's not going to go away just because we want it to go away. We need to see vaccinations. We need to see how masks are doing. Guys, last year, I bet you we didn't have 3 cases of flu the entire spring. There was one reason we didn't have 3 cases of flu the entire spring. People were wearing masks. It stopped the transmission of flu season. So, I mean, I'm a believer in masks, and it's not even going to be something we're going to debate. We're under an emergency order by the State Board of Education. There's no debate about mask wearing in Estill County. So what are some things we can do? Item number 3 is the first one. We can enter into a COVID testing contract, which may help us somewhat in trying to deal with quarantine measures. Now, yes, I understand that everybody's doing as much testing as they can. This would be a contract with a group that the health department's already contacted with. There's other companies that's doing it. This does not cost you 1 red cent. We can do it for the month of, my understanding is in these contracts, and Grant, I don't know how much experience you've got with it, if we only want to test during starting now and going through October, we give them a place to do testing, and they only do it to October. They work when we tell them, they test when we tell them. We just have to give them a place. Now, the health department's offered to let us do it up there. We could send kids up there or parents up there to test. We can do it right here. We can do drive-through right here in this outside entrance right here, the old student entrance. If we wanted to have somebody, they would send somebody to do the testing. They can drive by right here, never come in the building, and do drive-by testing right here. It's whatever you all want to do if you want to enter into this contract. KDE is really pushing for us to enter into it. And I don't want to get to the point, there's so much testing going on right now. Donna, you all saw a ton of patients today, you're wore out. But if this thing does meet a peak and falls back to what we would call some type of normal, we don't need them testing. Maybe right now we need them, we might not need them 3 or 4 weeks from now. So I think this contract is, they test when we tell them they can test. We tell them what the days are, what the lengths are, and that right there. So I'll leave it totally up to you all. We can continue to let our local providers try to do this right now, but with this surge, I do think that y'all are getting to your max. You can speak better than I can.
Well, I don't think we're to our max.
No, but I mean, you're worn out, let's put it that way.
I think there's a lot of things to consider with this contract because you're putting more and more responsibility on the school. And I think there's a lot of things to consider. From what I read in the contract, they're going to supply a lab person that will actually come do the testing, is what I understand. But I feel like that there needs to be some protocols that are in place about, what you do if you have a positive, as far as follow up with that. Somebody's going to need to keep some kind of record about the testing. So I just think there's a lot of things to consider with it.
And another thing, how is that company gonna know what their system, you know what I'm saying? Or even if they have it, you know what I mean? Like anybody could go over and get tested, just to see if they, just to do it. That's what I'm saying.
And the company bills the state $96 per test. And it's no cost to the individual.
We can answer those questions. If we're going to have a special call board meeting here in 2 weeks, I can bring it back to you all then. And let's answer some of those questions. 2 weeks is not going to hurt us
Are
right
these
now.
rapid tests, or are they?
They're rapid
Okay.
tests. And then what happens if you do a rapid and it's positive,
Negative.
you have to send it out for confirmation.
Because sometimes with the rapid test.
You get
You
a false
negative or
positive.
false positive?
I mean, a false negative,
Right.
not a false positive.
That's probably my biggest concern with it, is that all of a sudden somebody gets a false negative and they think they're good to go, but 2 days later, they are just deathly
And
sick.
then you
and-
have to deal with parental consent. You're going to have somebody that's going to be responsible for getting consent. I think there's already a lot of concern from the parents that we're doing things to their kids at school, such as vaccines were offered today. Now we're going to offer testing at school. I just think parents have a lot of concerns about some of that. I'm all for doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And if this is the right thing and we're doing it the right way, then I would like to proceed with it. But I think that we just need a little bit more information before we,
Here's what I hear. Let's gather some more information. We got a special call board meeting here sometime the second week of September, sometime before the 11th. So September 11th, we'll have a board meeting before then, and let's see exactly where we're at, and we can make a decision then and not sit here and, debate right now what we don't know details.
yeah, and I'm all for doing the right
And,
thing. Please don't think, I'm just asking questions
No.
about this situation.
That's not a problem, and there was a survey done today by superintendents in KEDC, and there's 76 school districts that's part of KEDC, I believe is correct, and I think about 50 of them responded, and less than 10 are entered into a contract right now, because their community is able to keep up. It's just a matter, if we level out and start going down, we probably don't need them. But if something happened, the spike kept going on and it keeps putting pressure on local healthcare, maybe we do. So let's gather that information, and I would ask Ms. Isford if you would maybe shoot me an email in the morning with those questions, and if any of the others have questions about what we need to find out, I'll get that information and we'll get it back as soon as can. And we don't have to rush into this, by no means.
I'm familiar with the lab. I mean, we use this lab. We work with the health department. We use this lab.
Mandatory attendance and school calendar. As I've told you all, that now our only choices is that if we miss school, we have to make it up, just like a snow day. There's no option. We've got 10 NTI days, but every year this school district misses on average somewhere between 15 and 20 days of school due to bad weather. So if you use all your NTI days, if we have to take off time, that means there's going to be snow days later on that we're going to have to make up. So you have to make a decision here over the next few days. I'm even going to ask you to table this one, but I want you to be considering, and I want everybody to know. And I know this is not going to be popular. It's not going to be popular with students. It's not going to be popular with teachers. It's not going to be popular with anybody. But if something happens here over the next 2 weeks, we got to take off 5 or 6 days because of a COVID surge, then we're not going to be able to take a full fall break. We may not be able to take a fall break at all because we're not going to be able to get our school days in as it stands right now. By law, we have to go 170 school days. No choice. 170 days with kids in person. Now, if we quarantine a child, they're on quarantine, that child does not get counted absent. Any child quarantined does not count absent. If I send the whole 3rd grade home and everybody else is going to school, that's not a snow day. A snow day is when everybody stays home. And if we have to do that, we've got to make it up. So that's the attendance laws. Am I missing anything, guys? Is Donald in DPP, Tanya, your former role, are we missing anything with that? So we need to just put everybody on notice tonight. And when we come back the week of September 7th, 8th, or 9th, whatever day you all want to meet that week, we're going to have to consider a change in school calendar. If we're able to, if we see numbers start going down and we don't have to miss school here in the next 2 weeks, let's leave it alone. Maybe it's not until spring break. We lose spring break. We lose spring break almost every year anyway because of snow. It's the only way we can make up days. But we're putting everybody on notice right now that we could possibly be looking at going to school the first 3 days of fall break. And if it got bad enough, we might have to go the entire week. So that would mean a calendar change. Just put that in the back of your mind. Be thinking about it. You're going to start getting calls. And listen, this old mean superintendent doesn't want to take away everybody's fall break. But the bottom line is, I'll guarantee you, if you're asked, do you want to go to school during fall break or do you want to get out of school June 20th? If you ask them that question, nobody wants to go to school June 20th. But if it takes us to June 20th to get 170 days in, that is exactly what you'll have to do. There's no guarantee this legislature is going to give you any emergency days. They're going to give you extra NTI days. There's no guarantee. It may be for naught. They may come up during the legislative session, give us 10 more NTI days. They may give us calamity days. But even if they give you calamity days, teachers still have to work. We don't have any teacher in our district. If they were asked right now, do you want to get out of school Memorial Day, or do you want to and lose fall break, or do you want to have fall break and get out June 10th? They're going to choose lose fall break. I think they will. I can't see anybody wanting to go into June. So we will do that at the special called meeting as well, okay? I will send out a weekly superintendent's report tomorrow. I will report to our parents, just like I did this past Saturday. When you go to our website and you pull it up again, and I did put a couple calendars on there for you to look at on that one, so you all can refer to those as you make your decisions. But if you go back to the website, and this time it didn't pop up, but usually when you first pull it up, that box will pop up, and it will give you my release from last Saturday about COVID-19. That's what happened this year. Jeremy will post that again. I will probably do that report tomorrow before I go home. And I'll talk about what's happened during the week and where we're at. And I'll give everybody up the update. And guys, I'll be the first to tell you, no other district is putting these numbers. I won't say no other district. But a majority of districts are not giving you the same information that we're giving. Esser funding, we had a survey that went out, that was part of our requirement. And you can see what the public and you can see what the teachers wanted or how they rated how the money should be spent. As you know, we've got $8 million to budget. And based on that budget, and I don't know, we may have a hard time it coming up, but we'll see. We'll make sure. There's the what, Jeremy?
What do you want to see first?
I don't know which one. This is the staff survey. It's fine, either one. But I'm going to let you all go through this. And what we did on each question, we asked them to rank. What is most important to you? What's least important? Rating it 1 through 5. And you can see those numbers there, but you can also go down, when you get down to specific questions, it will give you the number of responses in each one. Go back up at the top, Jeremy. You can put your mouse on it and it tells you too, don't it? Or you can go to the question report itself and it will tell you exactly. It'll tell you how many numbers that you've got for each one of those. And we'd already had a public forum. We had some discussion at the last board meeting about how this money would be spent. So I have given you a preliminary draft budget that is supposed to be approved by August 31st, but they have pushed that out a little bit. And Jeremy, you can go to that budget. It's for your information only right now. But I'm going to bring it back to the meeting here in September as well. And right here, as of right now, is how we have determined to spend this money. And that's based on, it lined up with what the survey said, and it also lined up with some of our needs earlier. Notice that you've got FY22, FY23, FY24. So ESSER 3 goes an additional year. That's why you only see for summer school there, for instance, you see nothing in 22, nothing in 23. That's because it's in ESSER 2. That was the budget you approved back in the spring, okay, which was $3.7 million. So we already paid for summer school out of that. Summer school next summer is supposed to be paid out of that. But when that money's gone, this money will provide summer school for the 3rd summer in a row. Okay, that'll be the year I'm retiring. In June and July, there'll be summer school going on. And the money's there to pay for it. All of your construction projects are in here as well, down there under maintenance, I believe is where it's at. Yes. Go back up, Jeremy. Right there under HVAC and water quality, you'll see high school HVAC, $500,000. High school water quality, that's the sewer line. Middle school restroom upgrades, if we did that during the summer, that money would go out during July next year. So that means that would be in 23. And you can see south over in window security. You can also see somewhere there, come on down, Jeremy, right there under, well, I don't see middle school. Maybe it's back up. Not middle school, but there it is, Estill Springs Edition. $3 million. I missed it when I went by there. So all those construction projects are in the budget right now. You've got to decide what you want to do, but it's in the budget. Buses are in the budget. The school supplies, $75,000 for the school supplies the next 3 years is in this budget. It's on down there. It might be back up. No, right there it is, under welfare, under family needs. We budgeted $75,000 the next 3 years to pay for school supplies. No student in Essel County should have to buy school supplies next 3 years. So all those items are in there. In terms of the buses in that last year are in there, insurance is in there, and in this particular grant, right now I put it under indirect cost. We can set aside $1 million of this money for indirect cost. Now, if we've got a need, we'll budget it somewhere else, but we put it there right now because we want to go through this survey and make sure there wasn't items we didn't think about.
Is that money available right now? Are we able to draw any kind of interest on this money if we
No, it's not handed down yet, and no, it's done like your Title I and all your federal money. What we have to do is spend it and then ask for a reimbursement. So you spend it first, then you ask for a reimbursement. So right now, we're in the middle of spending CARES 2 money, and Angie will have to keep track of all those. CARES 1 money is gone. That was $1 million. It's gone. CARES 2 is probably, my guess, somewhere right now about 40 to 50% gone. It will all be gone by next June in 23, not 22, 23 the following year. So we're going to bring you back this budget more nailed down. We'll do that at the September special call meeting as well. There's no need to sit here and go through all that piece by piece. Okay? And that is it for superintendent's report. So you're the board member forum, Ms. Esser.
Okay. We're down to the board member forum. Does anyone have anything?
I just want to say how nice it was for that back-to-school picnic that we had for all the teachers and the staff. It was great. Just everybody was so happy because we're getting ready to start school again. We're going to have our kids back, and obviously, unfortunately, COVID's made its evil way back, and we are having to wear a mask. But everybody is just so happy to be back in school to see their kids, and they, that's when you become a teacher. You don't, as my mother said, you don't do it because you're going to make money. You do it because you love your students, you love your community, you want to make a life better for kids. And no offense, Mr. Saylor was great. You didn't make a speech that day, but it was wonderful. But seriously, with all the community support and
I think all the people had fun.
it was just a very great thing for all the staff.
It was like a big family reunion.
It was.
Yeah, it really was.
It was nice.
I mean, it's something we've never done before, and I think it's something we should continue.
I've had 37 open days, and it's the first time I ever showed up in shorts. Shorts and a shirt, and I've wore a tie for 37 years in a row, so,
Galloway.
36 in a row, so.
Galloway Farms was able to cater that,
Yes,
and they did an excellent job.
Fantastic.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we really appreciate them being a great community.
Donald and the Family Resource Centers,
They
and
were
Donald will tell
outstanding.
you that Family Resource Centers did, they helped put it all together. They done a fantastic job. It's been very favorable. It was a really good day.
And all the community partners that were involved. It was unreal.
Always blown away by community partners and the support this community gives our schools.
Well, the first few days of school was great, and I heard so many positive comments about how well things were going, and the principals and teachers, and just how smooth it was, and everyone was so glad, and I saw all kinds of children that were happy and smiling, and our goal is to get back to that, and we want to keep everyone safe, but we want our kids in school.
We got to try to defeat this enemy. We're in a battle.
Does anybody else have anything as far as board members? That brings us down to public comments. Do we have anyone that would like to address the board? Okay. Would you like to come forward so that we can?
Wait just a minute so Mr. Simpson can give you a microphone where it'll pick you up.
You hear me all right? Testing, testing. Yeah?
If you could just share your name with everyone.
Yeah, sure. My name is Nate Olcott. I got 3 kids that go to Estill County Schools. Just moved to town into May, so kind of new, don't know anybody. I wrote everybody an email. I sent it to all you guys July 30th. I never heard anything back from anybody, but I don't know if you got it or not, but I was just going to start by reading that, which is kind of outdated at this point. You'll see why. But,
Let me ask you, you said July 30th? Because
Yeah.
I can tell you, I try to respond to every email. I want to go back and see if I can find it and see if
So it's in my notes, July 30th. It might have been the 31st, or,
Did you all see it?
Oh, wait a minute, no, that's the same one I think.
That doesn't mean, I mean, things sometimes get kicked to spam. I'm not making an excuse,
Sure.
but I've responded to 30 parents this week by email, so
this was emails I got from the website at Estill County Board of Ed, or, I mean,
it could
so
have
are
gotten.
those the emails you guys use or look at, or, I mean, it was where I felt.
Yeah, I've responded to 4 or 5 of those this week because Jeremy always sends it to me. But we'll check. I just want to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody else. So
Yeah,
I
and
apologize.
And I would show you on my phone that they sent, but
That's okay. I
Okay, but-
apologize that nobody got back to you, but I pride myself in getting back.
nobody got it.
No.
Okay, well,
If we can get back to his email address before he leaves, I can go into the domain admin, and I can search and show you whether or not our domain actually exists.
yeah, I'll be glad to show you what I sent, yeah.
Yeah, we want to make sure there's not an issue
Yeah.
going on. Thank you.
All right,
I'm sorry
so-
for interrupting.
Well, here it is. It says, "I'm writing to you as a concerned parent of 3 children that attend Estill County schools. Also, as an American who believes in one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As a free American, I'm getting tired of government overreach by the way of mask mandates and pushing non-approved, experimental so-called vaccines on my family. And I was saying, please don't succumb to big government pressure and force masks on my family. I ask you to stand for freedom, stand and fight for the will and the rights of the people of Estill County. Let teachers and families decide for themselves whether to wear a mask or get a vaccine." And I said, please feel free to contact me with any questions. And then I put a quote in here from Ben Franklin. It says, "Any society that will give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both." And that's a Ben Franklin quote. Just like looking at things, I understand that you guys are coming from a place with a good heart that you want to do what's best for the community. But I guess I would just say that you don't know what's best for my family. You know, families know what's best for their family, and it should be their choice what medical decisions they make for their kids, whether it be a mask or not. I got a little information from the CDC that I thought was interesting. You can go on their website and get it. Children ages 0 to 17, for the 17 and 18 flu season, they reported 643 deaths for common flu. Any idea how many kids 0 to 17 have died from coronavirus in America since the beginning of the pandemic?
Very few.
430.
Very few.
I mean, why are we putting masks on our kids when they're not at risk of dying, less than the flu? And I understand it's a real virus and it kills people, but 99.9% survival rate and virtually 100% in kids. Let this virus go through the school and everybody will have natural immunity and nobody's going to die and we'll be back to having school. My other thought is, if coronavirus is like the flu in any way, it's not going away. I mean, you talk about a spike and coming back down, but the flu comes by every year, and if the coronavirus is like the flu, you know, are we going to do this for the rest of our lives? Is, you know, giving us a different vaccine booster or this or that every year? You know, it's not right. I'd like to look at this from a point of just as an American and freedom, it's liberty. I don't agree in the government overreach with mask mandates and vaccine mandates, especially with a vaccine technology that's never existed before and used in humans at least. You know, this is all experimental. I guess it's not right. Those are my thoughts. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them, but if not, that'll be it. Nothing.
We appreciate you coming.
Yeah, and we respect your opinion. I
We
mean,
respect that. We have same concerns you have, but once again, I mean, we have our attorney here and he can help answer some of those questions. We have to follow rules and laws and guidelines that are put forth before this district and this board. And it puts all of us in a quandary. I have 4 kids.
Right.
So, and I appreciate your concerns, but I don't have a good answer for any of it. I want to do what's right. I pray about it a lot, but we're all in the same quandary.
Sure. I guess I mean, I was just trying to, how to say this. I don't public speak ever, so.
It's okay, we
We
appreciate
don't
it.
either, I would say.
No, I mean, if, I understand there's consequences to not obeying the rules, but at the end of the day, we're also here for the people of this community and what they want, you know, and there's a lot of people out there that want their kids in school, and that just want to be left alone and not, you know, it's like my wife is in quarantine right now because my son is, or she's not in quarantine, but it's like, it just doesn't make any sense, you know? It's like you send my kid home to live with my other 2 kids that are allowed to go to school. Like, where's the science in that? It makes no sense to anybody with a brain, but here we are doing it, and I just feel like I need to say, am I the only one that sees this? It's like, this is ridiculous? Because I feel like nobody else is saying it. You know, my child, you know, the teacher got a phone call, said, you need to, you know, stand up for a color name, and you go to some isolation room. And then my other child was going to get picked up at the same time, and they threw my other child in the isolation room with all the other kids that had just been quarantined. And it's like, does this make any sense? You know, and like this stuff, not that I'm afraid of the virus in any way, I just think the whole thing is ridiculous. That's kind of where I'm coming from, and those are just some of the points I have. It's like, I just want my kids to go and be in school. I think if parents want their kids to wear a mask, they should wear a mask. I think if teachers want to wear a mask, they can wear a mask. But it's like telling them they have to do this and that from a political point of view instead of a medical point of view is none of their business. You know, it's governors shouldn't be giving medical advice. You know, I guess that's kind of what I'm thinking. So.
Mr. Seller, do you have any?
No, I am interested in the fact if your other child was placed in a quarantine room with other students, that's a no-no. That shouldn't have happened.
That's what I was told.
And we're trying, I mean.
I'm not even upset about that.
I know, but we're not perfect, but that would bother me if that happened. I want to.
She still comes home and is living with my kid who's not supposed to be in school, you know, and it's like.
We've discussed that. We've discussed that. Quarantine rules, even though that as a district, we have no say in quarantine rules. I mean, we talk to the health department, we consult with the health department, but ultimately the final decision on quarantine rests with them, and we try to support them. They've been good to us, but that doesn't mean that everything makes sense. You brought up something that we have talked about personally in our own building, that does it make sense to send one kid home in quarantine when they've got 2 other kids in the same household, eating together, some of them staying in the same room together, the other 2 kids get to come back to school, that child doesn't get to come back to school. So that's hard to imagine how that works. I'm not an epidemiologist either.
Right.
Or anything. We just have to exist under the guidelines that we're given. Because at the end of the day, we have to be able to fund our school system, failure to follow mandates, failure to follow protocols and rules means that we lose funding, we're not able to fund the schools that everybody wants to come to. So, I mean, there's just some things that we can't fight.
I understand. I guess, go ahead.
No, but I understand where you're coming from. I hope everybody understands where we're coming from, that we're doing what we think's best under the guidance that we're given, and that's the best that, you know, we can do at this point in time. We can try to correct stuff like this. That shouldn't happen. I took a note immediately as soon as you said that. I mean,
I guess
We've got some
it just
other
doesn't make
things.
sense to me why kids gotta go into quarantine if they're not at risk at all. I mean, less kids have died from the flu than they are of coronavirus, and they're perfectly healthy. And like, you turn our lives upside down. I understand you're not the one that's doing it, but it's like, you guys have the sway, I would feel like, or you call legislatures and these boards, this, you know, if you guys saying at all that this is ridiculous, or, you know, if you're just saying whatever you want, you know, that's kind of why I'm here to say I think this is ridiculous, and I didn't know if any of you thought that, why are we quarantining kids that aren't at risk at all of dying and would be better immunized if they actually caught the virus and were fine in 3 days, or asymptomatic the whole time anyways, you know, and that's just,
Grant, do
you
you
know.
have anything to share from a
Not really in response to, I mean, he's saying the same things that,
Okay.
he's letting it better than I've heard it some, in some.
Well, I'm not here to yell at you guys. I mean, I've seen some of the videos online. I'm surprised I'm the only one here. It's like, I feel like, you know, these are my kids. I care about them. And I don't know anybody in the community, but you know.
You're articulating a lot of the same frustrations that I hear from my clients in private conversations. I mean,
Okay.
These school districts do not, a lot of school district personnel don't disagree with the sense that you're expressing.
But can't we fight back at all? Or, I mean, if we all did a little bit?
All politics is local. This
Right.
is a situation where politics is at the state level.
Right.
And really national.
National, state level. Because
Yeah, but-
if these local folks try to take action on this, they are just at risk of being removed from their employment or removed from their office, because there is not power at the school district level to fight against the State Board of Education.
And I guess my only concern is this, and I understand that for the most part, thank God, we've not had a kid got deathly sick. I don't know if we've had one hospitalized. You might could tell me. I don't think, working in healthcare, I don't know one that's been hospitalized or been in an ICU or anything like that. My only fear is I don't want the first one, because I would not want the parent that would come to this board and say, if you had protected my child, if you went the other direction, then I wouldn't have lost my child. So there is that other group that is just as much on the other side, that's just as vocal and would be able to come and talk and say the same things. So thus, that's the quandary we're in.
I understand.
Trying to meet somewhere in the middle, and I can tell that you're sincere. I can tell by your demeanor. You understand that, and
I guess I'm more for just freedom. I mean, let people
Yeah.
make their own choices. Stop mandating me what to do, you know? That's kind of my thought, you know, from a government perspective. It's like, and I think masks are just the beginning, you know? You can look in the future and see vaccine mandates, you know, and it's like, they say it's not going to happen, but, you know, a couple of years ago, we wouldn't have boys in the girls' bathroom either, and we were dealing with that in places, you know? It's like, I'm just here to raise my hand right now and say, you know, I'm not okay with it, you know, and where it goes from here, I don't know, but.
we appreciate your
We don't
time.
know
We appreciate you
either.
coming.
We don't know
We're just
either.
as frustrated,
Yeah.
you know, we are.
I understand, and I think that all government is at a local level, and I think if, you know, not just Estill County, but a lot of counties stood up and say, you know, this is what the parents want, we're going to do that, and, I mean, you're going to withhold funding from everybody or whatever, I don't know what the pushback looks like, but I know that usually comes with a price, so who's willing to pay the price? I don't know, but that's just my thought on it, so.
Thank you, Nate.
We
And if you don't
appreciate
care, share your email with Jeremy, and let's
Yeah.
make sure we get that corrected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Do we have any other public comments at this time? I don't think Jeremy posted it, did he?
Yeah, there was comments that were posted. We received 5 comments. Most of them was around quarantine issues. There was a couple about why do we not have remote instruction. We've answered all those. I personally responded to each one of those individuals as well and gave them an answer, and I CC'd Donald and Tanya in those as well. So we have responded to all these. There was one about our agriculture program, which I forwarded on to our high school to answer that particular question. So we've answered all those questions, and we've answered them here again tonight, so there's no additional, so we're good.
So, at this time, I think it's time for us to adjourn. I have a motion to adjourn. Sheila Samples and Tammy Hardy. I'd like to motion